And then, of course, above all those, there is another level of pure bestowal, and that's called the Creator. Now, these are very mysterious terms that I'm sure you've seen in scriptures. Let's take the mystery out of them. Let's look at an article by Bala Salam that deals with exactly what this means. It is Shemati article number 115 from the book Shemati. And he describes it this way. Still. The still is something that does not have an authority of its own. Rather, it is under the authority of the landlord and must satisfy every wish and desire of its landlord. Now, remember, we are speaking here about the upper inner life. And we need to understand that the inanimate spiritual level has no freedom or power over itself, just as the physical level of still has no freedom. Because freedom and spiritual life begins with self-control. And a person who can't control his desires is regarded as spiritually inanimate. Now, a person who strives for the Creator will eventually come to a state where he clearly sees that he has no power over his nature. But this makes him ask the Creator for strength to control his egoism, and his egoism is really what constitutes his nature. He asks the upper force to give him power, but not just in order for him to do anything that he wants in this world. That's the way that the powerful people of this world act. They're very focused on one dominating desire, and all of their actions follow that desire. Because of that, that kind of a person becomes an even bigger egoist. All of his small desires only serve one overpowering selfish yearning, but the spiritual path is different. There, a man comes to a situation in which he wants to submit all of his desires to the Creator's will. And by doing that, he's actually expressing his free will. And at the same time, he's controlling his egoism. What he wants is for the Creator's qualities to rule over him. But the Creator already rules over him. He already governs him anyway. But still, the man aspires to achieve this state by his own free will. He himself wants to know, he wants to understand, and he wants to enjoy the Creator's power over him. And he wants to adapt all of his thoughts and all of his desires to that, the way that a horse adapts to a rider's commands. So in the inanimate state at the spiritual level, the person can't yet agree with all the actions that the Creator is going to perform with him. But he has reached a stage where he already feels the need in himself to fulfill all of the Master's desires. So, Bala Salam continues. Hence, when the Creator created creation for His glory, it is written, "Every one that is called by my name, and whom I have created for my glory." And it means that He created creation for His own needs. The nature of the landlord is imprinted in the creatures, meaning that all the creatures cannot work for another but for themselves. So, since the Creator created all creatures for His own sake, His nature is imprinted in them. And this means that each created being also does everything for its own sake. Everything that's been created is really meant only for a single purpose. And that purpose is to submit all of these little desires to the ultimate and the most satisfying one. That's why we see this scale of growing desire in the levels in creation. Man begins to feel and to understand this, and he now knows that the Master's properties are totally different from his own, and that there's nothing he can do about it. So that is the still level. There's nothing he can do about it. But Bala Salam continues. The vegetative is that which already has its own authority to some extent. It can do something that is contrary to the opinion of the landlord, meaning that it can already do things not for itself, but to bestow. And this is already the opposite of what exists in the will of the landlord. which he had imprinted in the lower ones to work only with the will to receive for themselves. Yet, as we can see in corporal flora, even though they are mobile and they expand in width and length, still all the plants have a single property. In other words, there's not a single plant that can go against the method of all of the plants, but they must adhere to the rules of flora, and they're incapable of doing anything against the mind of their contemporaries. Thus, they have no life of their own, but they're parts of the life of all flora, meaning that all of the plants have a single form of life, and all of the plants are like a single creature, and the plants are specific organs of that creature. So all plants exist in the same way, as if they're all parts of the same plant. They start growing, and they wither, and they die at the same fixed time of the year, and everything's pre-programmed, and nothing depends on what they do. They develop and grow regardless of their will. And Bala Salam says, similarly, in spirituality, there are people that have already acquired the force to overcome their will to receive to some degree, but are confined to the environment. They cannot do the opposite of the environment that they live in, yet they do the opposite of what their will to receive wants. This means that they already work with the will to bestow. So it's the same in the spiritual. Those who have too little power to overcome their will to receive completely are enslaved by their society. They can't understand its influence, and they can't work outside of it, but they're attempting to oppose their will to receive internally, meaning that they already are working with their desire to bestow, and these people are free inside, but they're completely dependent on their society, just like the vegetative level of plants are. The vegetative contains some manifestation of an independent desire. It can defy the master's will. And what he means by the master's will is the dictates of the will to receive, the domination of the ego. This kind of a person can work to a certain degree against what the ego tells them to do, because they've acquired a tool at this level, a screen, an inner force, and they now can work with desires. And the way that they work with the desires is that this person opposes the master's desire, which is his own nature, and that's the nature that the Creator gave him, his egoism. At this point, he already perceives that his nature does emanate directly from the Creator, but now he disagrees with his own inner quality, and he wants to influence it with an opposite attitude. So at the vegetative level, a person can already give instead of just doing things for their own sake.